Welcome back, this is Wargamer Sean. I'm here to bring you part 3 of the Necron Codex 8th edition review. We're going to cover troops today, and then we'll probably do designated transports as well, since there's only 2 troops. So, let's get right into it. Hope you've been enjoying this series, and continue to follow it, and if you aren't a subscriber, please consider subscribing, and hopefully you enjoy what I produce. Oops, sorry. Anyway... our first troops choice is Necron Warriors. They're 10-man units, and they can have up to 10 additional Necron Warriors. Each is armed with a Gauze Flare, and a movement is 5. Weapon skill is 3. Strength toughness 4. 1 wound, 1 attack. Leadership 10, and save of 4. So nothing new there. What is new, however, is that the Gauze Flare is 24-inch rapid fire, which that's the same, but it's strength 4, AP -1, and 1 damage. So it's now AP -1, which is nice. Most troop guns, the normal guns, don't really have any AP notoriously, so it's kind of nice to have an AP with that. The next one is the Immortals, and they come in 5-man units and can include up to 5 additional Immortals. They're armed with Gauze Blaster, which is a 24-inch range rapid fire, strength 5, -2 AP, 1 damage. You can also arm them with Tesla Carbine, which is assault 2, strength 5, AP nothing, damage 1. Each roll of a 6 it causes 3 additional hits. The whole squad has to replace their weapons if they change them. Now, last edition, I thought the Gauze Flare was the better way to go, or the Gauze Blaster, sorry, and I didn't think there was as much use for Tesla carbines. This edition, I still like the Gauze Blaster because of the AP, but the Tesla carbine being 24-inch assault 2, and any 6s become 3 hits, there's definitely an advantage to using them, and actually, I have some built up with the Tesla carbines, but never really use them that much. I plan on trying to use them this edition because I think they have their place. So that's the 2 troops choices. Let's go through the transports. So the Ghost Ark is 1, and it has 14 wounds. And a weapon skill of 6, strength 6, toughness 6, save of a 4+, leadership 10. It does have a changing profile because it's got 14 wounds. So it has a 12-inch movement phase and a 3-up ballistic skill and 3 attacks at 8 to 14 wounds. And then at 4 to 7 it has 8-inch movement phase or movement range, and then a 4 ballistic skill and D3 attacks. 1 to 3 has 4-inch move, 5 ballistic skill, and 1 attack. It has 2 Gauze Flare arrays, which are 24-inch rapid fire 5, strength 4, -1 AP, 1 damage. So that's 10 shots, and if you're at 12-inch range, you're also getting 20 shots, which is nice. So, they have living metal, so they get a hull point back every turn. They have quantum shielding, like we talked about with some of the other units before. Hovering, instead of measuring distance and ranges to and from the model's base, measure to and from the model's hull or base, whichever is closer. If it reaches 0 wounds, it explodes on a 6, and with those within 6 inches cause D3 mortal wounds. You can make reanimation rolls for any slain models from units that are embarked on the Ghost Ark, even though they're not technically on the battlefield. So that's different. Most vehicles, they don't count as being on the battlefield. Any models returned to this unit this way are added to the number of models embarked on the Ghost Ark. If the models cannot be returned because there's no more room, then they can't be returned using this rule. In addition, at the end of your movement phase, you can make a reanimation protocol rolls for slain models from Dynasty, whatever Dynasty you pick, with warrior units within 3 inches of Ghost Arks. You cannot use this ability on a unit that has already had the benefit of or been the target of a resurrection orb or orb of eternity. It can transport 10 infantry models, and they must infantry models which must be warriors or characters. It cannot transport destroyer lords. It says that specifically, which is kind of a bummer. but they couldn't before, so I never really used it for that. I still think, you know, Ghost Arcs are worthwhile, and they do put out a decent amount of shots. And you know, I think depending on, you know, if you have a Cryptek that can repair or do D3, you know, heal versus just one, I think they're a good transport choice. The next transport, and I guess it's technically just a flyer now, it's not designated as a designated transport, is the Night Scythe. That one is a 6-up weapon skill, and then strength 6, toughness 6, 12 wounds, leadership 10, 3-up save, and moves 20 to 60 inches with the ballistic skill 3, with 7 to 12 wounds and 3 attacks. 4 to 6 wounds, it moves 20 to 40 inches, and then 4-up ballistic skill D3 attacks, 1 to 3 wounds, 20 to 25 inches, 5+ ballistic skill, and 1 attack. They have 2 Tesla Destructors, which are assault 4 each, 24-inch range, strength 7, AP 0, 1 damage, and every roll of a 6 equals 3 hits instead of 1. So like it was before. It has living metal, and it's airborne, so if units don't have fly, they can't charge it or attack it in the fight subphase. It's hard to hit, so you have to -1 for attack rolls for models that are shooting at it. And then it's supersonic, so each time it moves, it can first pivot 90 degrees on the spot. This does not contribute to the how far it can move. And then you move the model straight forwards. Note that it cannot pivot again later in after the initial pivot. When this model advances, increase its movement characteristics by 20 inches until the end of the phase. Do not roll dice. If it reaches 0 wounds, it roll a d6. On a 6, it crashes in a fiery explosion. Those within 6 inches suffer d3 mortal wounds. Now, the invasion beam has changed. So when you set this model up at the same time, you can also set up any number of friendly infantry units on their tomb world rather than setting them up on the battlefield before this model moves in the movement phase. So it has to be before it moves. A single friendly dynasty unit that was set up on the tomb world can be beamed on to the battlefield by the Night Scythe. Now it's any unit, so it's a little bit more. Well, it is infantry, I guess. It is specifically infantry, but there's a little bit more wiggle room here with this. And they have to be set up within 3 inches of this model and more than 1 inch away from an enemy model. If all Dynasty Night Scythes and monoliths from your army are destroyed, any friendly units still on their tomb world are considered to be slain. So you have to be careful if you're using the Night Scythe or an obelisk to transport your models there. You have to make sure that you get them out before they're destroyed. Now, luckily, you know, they're not super easy to destroy, but you do have to keep it in mind and be careful with it. So the other one, I know it's not technically a designated transport, but I am going to talk about the monolith, which is a heavy support choice, but it still can transport units, so we're going to discuss it here. The monolith has a weapon skill of 6, has strength 8, toughness 8, that's pretty good. It has 20 wounds, which is also very good, 3 attacks, 10 leadership, and 3+ save. It has, with 11 to 20 wounds remaining, it moves 6 inches, and has a ballistic skill of 3, and Portal of Exile, it works on a 4+. 6 to 10 wounds, moves 5 inches, ballistic skill of 4, and Portal of Exile is 5 up. 1 to 5 wounds, moves 4 inches, 5 up ballistic skill. Portal of Exile works on a 6. So you can, luckily, and like before, you can set this into Death Descending. So during deployment, you can set it up in the upper atmosphere instead of placing it on the battlefield. At the end of any of your movement phases, you can bring it in. And it has to be more than 12 inches away from enemy models. So not even 9, but 12. On it, it has a Gauze Flux Arc. It has 4 of them, and they're heavy 3, strength 5, -2 AP, 1 damage, and then the Particle Whip, which is heavy 6, 24-inch range, strength 8, AP -2, D3 wounds. Now the cool thing is the Floating Fortress is it can move and fire heavy weapons without suffering the penalty to its hit rolls. So what's really nice here is, one, it had that rule before, but then with 7th edition, anything that was like a certain type of weapon, you had to snap fire everything else if you fired that weapon. So that's what made kind of Lehman Russ's bad, and made the Monolith kind of bad in the last edition. Now this edition, that's gone, and it also gets to fire without penalty for moving, and it's not moving very fast anyway, but it still makes the Monolith better, which I'm excited about. The Portal of Exile, when an enemy unit other than a monster or a vehicle finishes a charge move within 1 inch of this model, its Portal of Exile may activate, roll a d6, and compare it to the value required on the damage table above, which we talked about. If the roll is successful, the charging unit suffers d6 mortal wounds. That's a lot. And this can activate for any enemy unit that charges it. So it makes your opponent really question whether they want to charge it, and so it's probably better to shoot it. Well, it's toughness 8, it has 20 wounds and a 3-up save, so it's not really easy to destroy shooting-wise either, so it's a tough vehicle, really. It's kind of back to what it was back in 3rd edition when it came out, and all the way up through until 6. It was a hard one to kill. So it has that. It has hovering, but you always measure from the model's hull, even though it does have a base. It's kind of hidden underneath the hull. It does have living metal. It does have an Eternity Gate. When you set this model up, at the same time you can set up any number of friendly infantry, Dynasty infantry units on their tomb world, just like the flyer. And before the model moves in your movement phase, a single friendly unit that was set up on the tomb world can be transported on the battlefield by the Monolith and can be set up so it's wholly within 3 inches of this model and more than 1 inch away from an enemy model. If all Dynasty Knight Scythes and Monoliths are destroyed, then these friendly units that are on the tomb world are considered destroyed, so be careful with that. If it is reduced to 0 wounds, roll a d6. On a 6, it explodes, and each unit within 6 inches suffers d6 mortal wounds, so it's a pretty big explosion. I think that these transports have uses, and I think the Monolith does too. You just have to be careful. I don't think it's bad to bring it down from turn 1, then it can't be targeted for shooting, but you're also not going to bring something through that turn. But chances are it's probably, hopefully, going to survive. And the nice thing is that if it does survive, it's hopefully closer to your enemy units, and then your next turn before it moves, you can bring out a unit. And it's a big model too, so even let's say there's 1 or 2 enemies that are in base with it, you could still bring models in on another side. It doesn't have to come through that door, it can be anywhere within that model. It's a huge footprint, and you could still bring them in, as long as they're an inch away from an enemy, and potentially you could bring in a unit and charge the unit that it's that's close to it, or you can bring them out. The Monolith can move 6 inches, hopefully get out of range of the assault, and it can still shoot because it's got fly, and so they can just waste it with shooting whatever had charged it. So I think it has a lot of uses. They're point expensive, so is it going to be competitive? The Monolith, I'm not so sure, but time will tell. I mean, this is a new codex. We got to play with it a little bit, but it's going to be fun, and for me, kind of a more, I like narrative play too, is, I get to play with my toys, and they're going to be fun, to use, especially the Monolith now. So give it a little time. We'll see what happens, and see if things are, how well things work, but I'm excited. I know we went a little bit, I apologize that I'm a little hoarse voice today. I know we went to the kind of designated transports, and 2 of them aren't totally designated transports, but I covered them because they can transport models, so I thought it was a good time to kind of cover those. And actually, the heavy support section is pretty big, so covering some of this stuff now I think will help. And the troops section, like I said, is only 2 guys. So this will conclude part 3, and then we will do part 4. next, and that'll be the elite section of the Necrons. Hopefully you're enjoying this. Please stay tuned. I'm hoping to have all of these videos kind of come up on Saturday at like midnight, and so they all should kind of be up at the same time with luck. I'm going to try to, if the weather holds out, go to Adepticon on Saturday. So I'm hoping to have these videos up and ready to just go, so that I don't have to worry about it if I can make the trek to Adepticon. So until next time, guys, take care, keep on wargaming, and have fun, okay? See you later.
Goodbye, you sexy motherfucker.